Hey, welcome to the Rain and Morale podcast. So, do you ever feel like screaming out in the office, on Zoom, or outside the school gates? For the love of God, come on, really? Then, if this is you and you're looking for an honest, fun, and frank podcast on life and business, then sit back and listen to me, Rain and Morale. I'll be bringing great people on the show to talk, share, and debate their life experiences and business challenges, keeping the show unpolished, but in a fun and unique British style with sarcasm, tenacity, maybe a few swear words or tears. This podcast keeps it real, honest, raw, and removes the bullshit in the only way I know how, through authenticity and getting shit done. Think of it less like the Housewives of New York or Towie with the lipo and drama, and more like the house lives of the real world. I hope you'll take something away to be better informed, laugh, smile, or maybe even finally getting the confidence to shout, come on, really. So enjoy. Hey, Karen, welcome to the Rain Morale podcast. How are you today?
I'm fantastic. Good to see you after so long. Thanks for getting me on today.
Oh, you're absolutely welcome. It was just one of those things that, for the listeners, Karen is based in Dubai. Karen and I first met probably about 3 or 4 years ago, and I've kept in touch ever since. And I've been following some of the work that Karen's been doing and her team in Dubai. And so it was a no-brainer, just a fiery, punchy, energetic northern lady out in Dubai doing some incredible stuff. So thank you, Karen, for coming on the show. I really,
My
really
pleasure.
appreciate it. By way of introduction, Karen owns is CEO of the Storey Group. Has been based out in Dubai for nearly 3 decades now, though she clearly doesn't look old enough. But also, you're on the board of many really cool, purposeful startups in our kind of sustainable impact regenerative industries, looking at sustainable technologies and focusing on climate change. Um, we'll probably touch on COP a little bit. Hey, you're in Dubai, and it's coming in the next couple of weeks. But
Yeah.
thank you again for the show. And Karen, just to start with, one of the big initiatives that you have been working on is the 1 billion trees. Please tell us a little bit more about how you got involved, where you're at, and what left is still to go.
Okay. Yeah. I guess it's worth kind of saying that I kind of came to sustainability a little bit later in life. And really our business was very much around consultancy and people and change management and all of those things. And then pre-COVID, I really started thinking about what is it that we can do to have more impact. So I wanted to really pivot from that people to planet and thought, right, okay, let's look at some of the biggest challenges that the world is facing and, looking at the state of the world and looking at the state of all that we need to do from a carbon perspective. I thought, okay, let's put a serious kind of project together around trees. Originally, I kind of thought 100 million. And then I went to bed and slept on it. And I thought, no, that's not enough. So I said to the team, we're going to go for 1 billion trees. And so, over the last 4 years, really fortunate to have partnered with great technology partners, great foundations and NGOs. We're now planting in 15 countries around the world with our partner EcoMatcher, and then on the ground here in the UAE,
Yeah,
focused very heavily on mangroves. And we've now got over 150 organizations who are behind us, who are funding forests. Engaging their customers and their teams in
yeah,
forests, and yeah, I mean, I feel really blessed
yeah.
that he managed to take it from that kind of, little, it feels like a child now that's growing up. And it's super exciting to see all those trees going around in the
Yeah.
world. So, yeah.
Well, actually, that's an important part. So when you said 1 billion trees, actually, it wasn't just trees in a forest. You are also looking at mangroves and the importance of restoring mangroves due to land degradation, flooding, and all, fish. All of there's a ton of reasons why you do it. So was that a conscious decision that it wouldn't just be trees?
Well, look, it was. And I think predominantly in the UAE, the reason that I wanted to go for mangroves was that we don't have to worry about the water table. You know, they're coastal forests that survive in salt water. And, you know, we have an abundance of coastlines across the UAE. It aligns with the UAE's pledge of 100 million mangroves by 2030.
Right.
And, you know, it was something that we could tell a good story because it's exactly as you say, Rona. It's not just the fact that these are super carbon heroes in terms of the carbon sink above and below they can, but the biodiversity impact. I mean, the reserve, I was down there yesterday, you know, to see the birds flocking, to see the crabs, the fish, the different species that weren't there before that are calling it home now is
Yeah.
just, it's phenomenal. Yeah.
How are you, just explain to people, how are you working? Because often we have this title like 1 billion trees, but what we probably don't see is all the interconnected impacts that we're having. So from a social point of view, who's delivering the planting? Is it local people? Is it businesses? How are you working the social angle?
Well, I mean, it's a bit of both. One of the things that we do in all of the countries and all of the projects is we partner with foundations, with NGOs, and with local planting partners that usually have a link to a university. The reason for that is we've got to make sure that we've got project governance, that it's right tree, right place, right time.
Yeah,
And what we do is bring much needed funding to actually make this happen.
right.
But also we have community engagement projects going on as well. So we'll have volunteers, we've got the scouts, we've got the girl guides, we've got citizens coming in to help us to clean the mangroves because sometimes we get algae. So they'll come in
Right.
at the weekend and they'll clean. They'll help us to remove plastic. Unfortunately, we have a lot of plastic that comes in from the ocean into the reserve. So they do that. But also the corporate partners that I work with, they use this from a CSR employee engagement as well. So, you know, we have, you know, teams of maybe 100 people come in from a corporate client. We'll give them a little bit of education on biodiversity and why what they're going to do is
Yeah.
important. Because having that emotional connection is really good. Then we take them down to the reserve and they get their hands dirty. They actually plant mangroves, they put them in themselves.
Yeah.
And then what we do is we capture those mangroves with our technology, so that when they go back to the office, they can virtually visit and track that tree. They can do all of that
Right.
cool stuff. But yeah, for me, that engagement is super important because just having a digital proposition, I mean, it works when you've got large scale planting partners, but where we've got corporates who are here on the ground in the market, I say to them, let's get them down there. Let's get them in nature and actually seeing it.
Oh, amazing. And you touched on it earlier about Dubai's commitment actually for 100 million mangroves. Is that for 100 million individual mangoes,
Mangroves.
mangroves
Yeah.
planted, or is that for areas?
So it's physically, I mean, they've gone out with 100 million mangroves. I mean, what I would say to you is I think that as is the way with the UAE, it's an enormous ambitious endeavor. And I think what is probably more important is that we would love to get to that number, but I think it's also about preserving what's existing, because there's been a lot of mangroves that have been taken out through
Yeah,
development. If you look at the coastline of Dubai, the reserve where I sit is the only green space between kind of, you know, one mangrove forest a little bit further down towards the Sharjah border, and then the next one is in Abu Dhabi. That little
right.
spot of 7 kilometers that we're protecting is the only green spot on the map, on the coast.
Yeah.
So I think what's important is that, you know, we safeguard what we've already got, we expand where we can, but it's not just about putting a mangrove anywhere we've got coast, because it has to be the right soil conditions, it has to be where nature intended them. So a lot of the work that we do is with the Environment Agency, Abu Dhabi, and with our environmental scientists to make sure that we're picking the right spot where we're going to have good success rate and the forest will thrive quite naturally.
Oh, that's fantastic. And through the partners that you're working with, how do you measure success? So do you use acoustics? Do you using biodiversity, measurements around number of animals, species, things like that? How do you deliver that whole package of success?
Yeah, I mean, this is evolving, I have to say. So when we started, the real basic measurement for us was getting those trees in the ground, making sure that they're healthy, making sure that we're monitoring their impact over the next decade. That was kind of KPI number one. But we now with certainly with our dashboards and for those that do track with EcoMatcher, we give them impact report, which looks at the SDGs and looks at, so we're trying to make it easy for companies to do some reporting on their ESG reports. They can pull in data from us. We are working with them now to really give them much more of that habitat impact.
Right.
Certainly in this part of the world, what endangered species are we looking at? I mean, the reserve where we have the mangroves is also now the biggest reserve for turtle nests. We've got 55 turtle nests along the beach. And it's just magical because we're protecting the nests, we're
Yeah.
translocating the eggs, we're then releasing the little baby turtles with the kids in the community. And every year on year, we're seeing an increase to the nesting. So, we're trying to bring in as much scientific rigor as we can without overwhelming people. What are we tracing? What are we tracking? What impact are we having? And I think if we keep it simple, it's more digestible for corporates, it's more digestible for residents, and we've just got to tell a really good story why this matters.
No, absolutely. That's incredible. So kudos to you and the team. I can just imagine looking on Google Earth now and kind of homing in and just seeing this little green patch. So fair play to you. Um,
Absolutely.
Obviously, it would be amiss to not, actually, by the time this podcast comes out, COP will have been and gone. But obviously, COP's coming up in a few weeks. We're recording this middle of November. How's that impacting Dubai? What's the feeling and the vibe? There's a lot of conspiracy concerns, who it's run by, the president, all of this, and we're not going to digest all of that. But how are you approaching it as the Storey Group and with some of your partners? What's your view of COP28 and what we hope you want it to deliver?
I think what certainly COP fever has really been building, certainly in the UAE, for a number of months. And I'm actually really optimistic, Rona. I know that there's been a lot of press that has been challenging, COP28 and Al Jaber's leadership of COP.
Yeah,
But I have a slightly different view, because fossil fuels are not going anywhere. They're not at the moment. Okay,
yeah,
we've got a transition. And, while the oil and gas industry are definitely part of the problem, they're also a big part of the solution. And whether that is redeploying capital into renewable energy, whether it is supporting some of those large scale, less developed countries who need climate finance, I'm
yeah,
really hopeful that they will achieve getting that commitment that didn't happen after Glasgow and hasn't happened really consistently. There's a lot of puff and not a lot of action from COP typically. I have
yeah.
a feeling that this will be a historic COP where we will actually see that translate into results for the globe. So I'm gonna, don't we'll look back on this after COP and see if my prediction was correct. But I'm really hopeful. They've put in the work. They've put in, really driving commitment and conversations. So
Mm,
I'm really hopeful we'll see some amazing announcements coming out
yeah.
of COP.
And I guess there would be no better comeback, if you like, or no better response to actually delivering
The
on
critics.
something that is the critic. So yeah, let's leave that one there, and we'll see what happens in the coming months.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about some of the amazing startups that you're kind of a board member on, and
Yeah.
we often talk about collaboration and interconnectedness. Talk about a few of those.
Yeah, sure. So I guess, one that springs to mind, especially given what we've just been talking about, is I recently joined the board of True Footprint.
Right.
And we have launched a really ambitious project called the 100 Million Livelihoods Project. And this is a game changer as far as I'm concerned, because the whole premise of that particular initiative is that we want to enable global companies and their global kind of value chains to reduce climate financial risk. And we're going to do that in a really innovative way that hasn't been done before. So we are going to be looking at nature-based solutions at a landscape level. What I mean
Right.
by that is there's a lot of companies that are investing millions and millions in nature-based solutions, agriculture, around the world, and they tend to do it quite piecemeal. There's no real traceability, no real visibility on what is happening on the ground. So what we've done is brought together a kind of a consortium of the best in the world, from being able to mobilize multiple projects across multiple geographies, but bringing in all of the very latest tech to be able to, from even having a data point where we can simulate the impact of bees and 40 million data points a day.
Yes.
I mean, it's crazy stuff. But I think what's really interesting for us is to make sure that the communities where those projects are getting the benefits from any carbon credits that are created. This
Right.
is about uplifting livelihoods, improving what is happening on the ground, making those communities feel super proud, well rewarded, helping them to make improvements through technology to increase and look after the planet in a more efficient way, and then
Yeah.
giving them a market for their products as well. That means that they're getting as much of the value chain back into their own pockets. So I'm super excited about that. So
Amazing.
we've tentative, yeah, we've got some tentative, large scale organizations that we're going to announce that are coming on board as our foundation partners. And
Just
I
mention
think
the name.
again,
Just mention the name again of the business for me.
it's True Footprint.
True Footprint. Fantastic. And I guess if people go online, they can find it.
Absolutely, yeah, 100%.
Super.
And then the other one that I am also on the board of is Green Tech Mina, and that is a waste to energy and waste to oil. And what we're doing there is really kind of looking at, whether we like it or we don't, we have lots of landfills, we have lots of waste, and changing behavior and changing the way that we consume products, products, etc., is a bit like what we were just talking about in terms of fossil fuels. It is going to take time to
Yeah.
transition to a better way. In the meantime, we have to be able to take some of that waste, take some of that and do something with it. So in less developed countries, what we're saying is if you've got a waste problem and you've got a power problem, we can solve it. And we've
Right.
got low capital costs, small footprint waste to energy operations that we can put in place that will give them stable base power. We're just about to launch something actually with one of our partners, which is on bamboo and energy. So we're taking bamboo as a renewable crop, and then we are putting it through a gasification process and creating 10 megawatts of power. So all of these projects are super cool because it enables us to tap into funding, solve a problem of the waste. We're also doing a partnership with Ocean Plastic to take that and then transfer it back into oil. That's some of the, again, just that whole circular renewable economy.
Yeah.
So that's another super exciting one.
Yeah. Actually, funny enough, I was recording with Captain Kieran Kelly this morning and talking about waste to energy, and the realities are that whilst we assume, try, or do transition, it's got to be done within an economic and also equal stature. Now, that's, you and I both know that's going to be hugely difficult because of the 1% over the rest of us, the 10% of wealth, etc. What do you say to people that will go, well, if we just keep providing solutions to the waste, to the plastic problem, to the, clothing that gets dumped around the world, are we encouraging business as usual? How do you, and I know you wouldn't say that was true, but how do you answer that and sort of let people know we have to make a move whilst
Yeah,
dealing with it upstream? What do you
yeah.
say?
Look, I think it's got to these things have got to run in parallel. This is not a cop out, creating a solution for a problem that is only going to get worse. All we're trying to do right now is say, look, let's deal right now, but from a re-engineering the way that we live and we produce products, that has got to be done. And you've got to incentivize businesses to go on that journey. The business as usual cannot be that. It's going to have to be a bit of policy. It's going to have to be, the stick in the carrot. It's going to
Yeah,
have to be taxing those organizations who are not actually standing up and doing the right thing. I
yeah,
think consumers will vote with their feet eventually,
yeah,
because I think if more people are educated, more people, and certainly the younger generations that are coming through, conscious choices and making those conscious choices will divert them to brands who are doing the right thing. So I think financially they won't have an option in the next decade. They will have to
right.
do it, whether they are doing it because they know that they should, or doing it because their bottom line is suffering. One or the other way, we're still going to get the solution I think we need, but it's not going to be easy, is kind of my take on it.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I think 2030 to me, feels like this decade is all about the realization of the world rather than we're going to get to the solution by 2030. And I'm sorry to say that out loud, but I do
I agree.
think it is that race to I'm either going to be legislated against to have to do it, or I'm going to do it because it's the right thing, or there's that bottom line. So yeah, I couldn't agree more with you on
Mm.
that. But in the
Yeah,
meantime, while that's happening, you're working obviously with projects and programs and startups that can, as they succeed and as they scale and as their prices can come down and they also can prove that they can work in different geopolitical areas and geographies,
absolutely.
then there'll be
Absolutely.
further place to hide to say we haven't got a solution.
Exactly. And I think the other thing that's really important for us, I was having a debate with somebody the other day, and they were saying to me, Karen, but you can't go into Africa and put your solution in, because then all of the guys who are scavenging and collecting the waste, I said, we still need them. We're going to give them more stable jobs. We're going to upskill them. We're going to be able to, they can still do the collection of the waste, but they can also then transition into helping us to run and get this power to the community. And then they will actually create more jobs and create more skilled labor through this. And I think also, just all of our projects, we have a percentage of every project that goes
Yeah,
into building schools, building hospitals, improving the community out with the projects that we're doing. And again, that is about creating new jobs in the green economy in less developed countries, and educating the kids that, what, if we don't throw the plastic in the river and we actually take it to this point, we can
yeah,
reward people for doing that. So yeah, I think it's, again, there's got to be a will, there's got to be a way, there's got to be a much easier way for funding some of these projects, and more creative financial instruments to allow these less developed countries to be able to get on the track of doing this, because the technology is there. We need the funding to make it happen. And, I think that's the only way that we're going to actually see progress.
yeah. And obviously, you've touched on funding there, and having done, recorded loads of shows now, I've met amazing people doing amazing things, and it's like, give them the cash. It's like, I need at least 70 Earthshot prizes, right? So we know that we can't rely on just foundations and philanthropic funds.
Absolutely.
We need the combination of the government and legislation, but also private. But I still struggle with the amount of money that is claimed to go into the environmental space versus actually what gets in it. How many businesses are registered and have NGOs, etc. How many are actually doing the do? So I don't believe that the money's not there. What do you think is the biggest stumbling block to actually fully funding all of this?
Um, look, I'll go back to a little bit of what you just said there. I think there is a lot of rhetoric versus reality. But what I am seeing is that there are funds that are coming out to smaller type projects, and we've been working really creatively to look at debt financing for some of these projects, because most of our projects actually can deliver really good return on. I mean, our waste to energy projects give better returns than solar. They have better impact, lower cost, all of those things. So what I'm trying to do at the moment is work with financing to say, right, we are looking at creating a capital bond structure, which means that we
Right.
can bring funds in from people, and that can be capital guaranteed in a fixed bond for, 2, 3, 4 years. They get a good return on their investment, but that enables us to then raise debt financing to
Yeah.
do a 60-80 million project. And what I'm finding is that conversation is going much better.
Yeah.
Obviously there are big green funds out there. There are organizations, some of the financial institutions globally that we know of, that have got green funds that they are deploying to projects. So I think it's helping entrepreneurs and project developers to understand, to cut through the red tape. Who do I go to? How do I pitch my project? What is the criteria? And there's not enough of that layer going on.
Right.
So I must get 100 pitch decks in my email every week from
Yeah.
entrepreneurs who have got amazing ideas and amazing projects. And I could spend my whole time just going through those decks. But what I wish is that there was a much more seamless structure for those
Yeah.
middle tier SME project developers and ideation people, with the financial mentors in the middle at scale, that can then say, right, you should be over here, you should be over here. This is what you need. Here's the cash that we can give you. And
Yeah.
that's for me, that is the only way, because we've got to have entrepreneurs in the private sector driving innovation. We cannot rely on governments to make this happen.
No, here, I completely agree with that. So yeah, and just readdressing the balance of the number of, especially when we're looking at developed countries, the number of female founders, and supporting women in that journey to, on every level, being able to put their children into education, allowing them to work, and developing their communities. I do wonder that there's an underlying fear that, gosh, can you imagine a world where every girl is educated and goes through to education till she's 21, how the world would change. And I know
Absolutely.
you're passionate
Yeah,
about that.
100%. 100%.
And that's where I think there's an opportunity for many people and many entrepreneurs with these ideas to be able to address their pitch. Forget using the word green fund or green economy or green jobs. It's just, this is a business idea that has the following return on investment, social
So,
benefits.
yeah,
And although in saying that, I do think there's going to have to be a huge shift between short and long term planning. I know
correct.
some pension pots are now
Yep.
looking at big programs like solar and things like that, because it will look at 15, 20 years.
Yep.
Let's just hope, I guess, that more see that opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, a good example is with all of our kind of waste to energy projects or the bamboo projects, these are 20-year power purchase agreements that are
Right.
signed with the government. And that gives investors the security that when we're giving them financial projections over the next 20 years, that those are real and they're tangible. I mean, even from our waste to energy projects, we are looking at UK export finance on those
Right.
projects, because a lot of the equipment is coming out of the UK. So again, even in countries where the appetite for investment hasn't been there, with that level of UK export finance backing on the value of that investment, these are all the little bits of the jigsaw that it's taken us a long time to navigate through and get to the point where we're in a position to go to market with these things. But there's still a load to do, Rona. There's
Yeah.
I could spend a whole hour just talking about the finance bit.
Do you know what? Maybe that's certainly for another podcast. I've talked about financing with probably most of my guests in terms of what's
Yeah,
been their biggest barrier or battle, when actually, it's, for me, maybe I simplify things too much, but I'm like, it kind of makes sense on every level. Why wouldn't you?
yeah,
So yeah, time for another show maybe. But listen,
absolutely.
just to kind of tell me, say if you're working in a country like Indonesia or Latin America, what sort of things are you taking as waste and turning it into energy? How are you working, say, in a country where lots of waste, like you said earlier, no energy or low energy?
Mm.
How are you changing that infrastructure to benefit the communities? And are we still finding that the big players that own the patents and the technology are benefiting, or is it more shared out?
Look, I think, look, there's definitely global players that are, doing projects, 1 billion plus. We're not looking at that scale. We are looking at, you know, working in local communities. And the great thing about the way we're approaching waste is we can take pretty much anything apart from the usual inert. So, we take the steel, we take anything that we can recycle out. But
Yeah.
any municipal waste, any agricultural waste, we can even treat sewage sludge.
Yeah.
And what we do is we sort all of that at the front end. And then what we do from our technology point of view is we can take the moisture, more moisture out of that waste than any other system on the planet right now. And even to the guys who have got the $1 billion plants, they still have a moisture issue, which
Yeah.
sounds ridiculous, but it's true. So what we're looking at is, if we can have a couple of, a couple of really good plants within the community, we take the local collected waste, we put it into one place, and we can do all of the sorting and the output, and then we can have a small microgrid of distribution of energy
Right.
thereafter. So what we try and do is look at the community, look at the amount of waste they have, make sure that we understand the existing jobs that are created within that ecosystem. How do we
Mm.
make it more efficient? How do we create and save those jobs? And then at the other side, how do we give them stable power for the input that we have, and the output is the stable power. So,
Yeah.
for us, that is the sweet spot. And with the PPA in place, the power purchase agreements, it means
Right.
we can quantify for our investors, and we can give them a really good return on that
Yeah.
investment for the next 20 years. And that for me is the sweet spot. That's where we're going to have success. And we've got 20 projects identified in our pipeline. And what we're doing at the moment is just getting those kind of, I would call them deposit funders, the guys who are going to
Yeah.
help us lock in the bigger funding. And the multiples that we can, out of $3 million, we can
Yeah.
actually put in a 10 megawatt power plant. I
Yeah.
mean, it's crazy because we can use that money to multiply and then still give our investors a fantastic return on investment.
Yeah. What would you say to people who would say, yeah, but solar and bioenergy and biomass and all of this, it's just kind of, it's never going to give enough energy. It's never going to be able to be reliable. And what if there's no sun or wind, or, we're constantly burning stuff? I do hear a lot of that, and I understand where some of that, I'm not stupid, comes from. But they are fair questions. People will sit there and go, "Oh, well, what are you burning, and where does that smoke go?" And
Yeah.
all of these things. What do you say to people who kind of go, "Well, are you sort of saying with your projects that they've got no energy to start with, or they've got intermittent, and actually we can get it to a 70% consistency? So every time there's an improvement." Or are you actually really fundamentally changing communities and going, they've now got 100% energy 24/7? How do you kind of answer that?
Okay, so I think that the most important thing is the technology that we've brought in together isn't it's not the incineration, it's when we are looking at gasification and we are looking to make sure that our plants are not actually they don't have emissions themselves. We first of all, any waste that we take into one of our plants, we run the plant itself. Okay, so first off, we do that. Then we create stable cloud. Now, the other thing that we can do with our projects is that it's modular. So we can
Right.
start small in a community and say, right, at the moment we need 10 megawatts, but we believe with population growth and with other things that are going on, we need to get to 50 megawatts by 2030. We can then
Right.
scale and it does create that base power that is 100% stable. I mean, if you look at what's going on, one of my team is out in Tanzania at the moment, and every time we're on a call, his electricity goes off and the generation runs out. And look at Lebanon. Lebanon
Yeah.
have got a huge waste issue and they've got a huge power issue. And they've got a huge, so can we bring the two problems together, and in the middle we've got a solution, and it's totally modular and scalable, and it
Yeah.
makes it easier for people to make a decision. We just need land. We need the municipality to agree to take the offtake agreement,
Right.
and that's all we need. We don't even need the countries themselves to invest. We just need them to say we need
Yeah.
it. Here's the land. We'll grant you the permissions, and we'll get on and do it.
Yeah. I heard, or I saw recently, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was Kenya, but the Kenyans had done, the government had given a day off for everyone, or was it a week off? I can't remember. And so everyone was going to go out and add to
Plant
the
trees.
biodiversity. Yeah, plant a tree. And I just thought, what a wonderfully simple idea. I think, did that get coverage over in Dubai? And
Well, I mean, I saw it, but it's because I follow anything to do with
yeah,
trees globally, so it did pop up on my feed, and I absolutely loved it. I'm hoping that I can convince the UAE to to do something similar because we've got millions of people in the UAE who all want to get involved. And I think, nothing would give me greater pleasure to get everybody out into nature and doing
yeah.
that. I think it's like you say, it's simple, but the impact is huge. And especially for the kids, I mean, just it's a lesson that will never be able to be taught in the classroom.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Listen, there's probably a really great place to end the session at this stage. I mean, we've talked about bamboo and waste to energy and mangroves or mangoes as I rename them now. And yeah, I think it's incredible what you guys are doing and achieving and connecting those dots from an idea to finance to the government to private investment. So kudos to you and the guys and all that you are doing. And just finally, on your target of 1 billion trees, where are you?
Oh, everybody asks me that number, and I can't give the number out. Um, but what I would say to you is we are well on our way. I mean,
Yeah,
we know that this is a long-term journey, but certainly in the UAE, we are, in the millions of both committed and hundreds and hundreds of thousands already planted. And 15 countries around the world. So I hope by the time we get to talk next time, I can probably give you a better number.
oh, that'll be amazing. And hopefully, once the tech and the blockchain and all that starts to link it, it will all be at the touch of a button.
Yeah,
And when that happens, you'll be able to kind of really hold this up and go, look what we've done. So, no,
absolutely.
congratulations. It's amazing to
Thank
have you
you
on the
so
show,
much.
Karen. And best of luck with COP. And
Thank you.
yeah, and when you come over to the UK, for sure, we'll meet up.
100%. And look, thanks for all that you do as well. You're an absolute sustainability superstar. So, we need people like you who are sharing these stories. And, huge kudos to you as well.
Oh, thank you, Karen. Awesome. Have an amazing rest of the day as well. Cheers.
Will do. I'll see you soon. Take care. Bye.
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 So that's it. You've made it. The show's over. Thank you for being with us. I hope you've been able to take something away, maybe solve a problem, or just know you're not alone. Here's hoping it made you smile with a few laughs along the way. Please feel free to find me on all social media channels, and you can subscribe to my YouTube channel. Just search the Road and Morale podcast. Have an awesome day and see you next time.